The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Get your check. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another DFS Army Domination Station tutorial. My name is Kevin Allen, aka The Geek from DFS Army, and today we're taking a look at NFL Showdowns, one of my favorite formats to play in the entirety of daily fantasy sports because these contests are really winnable, and I like winning. So today we're going to take a look at the Domination Station Optimizer. Don't worry. I'm going to make the screen bigger. You're going to get to see it, where we're going to go through all of the functions of setting up the tool to attack showdown contests. Those are single game contests. Over in DFS Army, we will be covering the single game contest in depth every single week with the primary focus on the primetime slates. Over the last couple of days, we've released an article, our NFL Showdown primer, which you can check out on dfsarmy.com, which really goes through a lot of the key stats and correlations that you'll find in tournament winning lineups. So that's a really, really important article to take a look at and reference throughout the season. In addition, on DFS Army, we keep a regular showdown analysis chart where we're looking at what the trends are that actually win these contests, what kind of captain spots we should use, which site, what type of salary we should spend. I'm going to cover a little bit of that stuff in this video today, but my focus is more on showing you how to set up the tool to do what you want it to do, to achieve what you want it to achieve, right? There are tricks, there are trades, there are all kinds of stuff. There are tricks and trades. There are no trades. There are tricks to the trade that you could take, that you can learn as we show you the nuts and bolts of setting up the tool to run 150 lineups to attack mass multi-entry tournaments. I want to be clear. This is not something I would use in cash games. For cash games and maybe a single entry, you just make the lineup. You can use the projections as a guide, but we've got other guidelines for what types of lineups win cash games. And the lineup is really, really different than what we should be setting up to win a tournament. There were also differences between Fanduel and Draftkings that we covered on the video I did yesterday, the full data-driven look at how to win showdown contests. Take a look at that if you're looking for more of the details, the statistics behind some of this stuff. Again, today we are just going to try to cover how to set up the tool, the mechanics of working the Domination Station. You got to manipulate the tool in order to get it to spit out winning lineups. You got to manipulate it, and then it spits out the lineups, guys. So let's get started. And I'm going to minimize me so you can see the screen. I know you want to see me next time. I'm going to take a look at the screen instead. And we're going to get right into it here. Fanduel. So today I'm going to work on the Fanduel side. Why? I don't know. I'm just going to do Fanduel. It's easier and it's a simpler format. So, why not? Here we go. First thing we do, Domination Station. We want to do the main mode. We have a back test mode, which you can actually go to after the fact and see what the nuts lineup was if you didn't get there, and you can rerun your stuff. It's awesome, but we'll talk about that another time. Fanduel single game contest, and we are looking at the Houston at Kansas City contest for week 1. Now, guys, this is not about a tutorial of how to attack the Houston and Kansas City specifically. What we're trying to do here is understand how to use this tool, but we are using this game, week 1, 54.5 point game total, as our guide. Just because that's what's loaded up right now. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at all of the basic settings here. This scroller bar here is a filter that allows you to filter through for each position group: quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, kicker. If we're making adjustments to exposures, I like to do that on a position group by position group basis. That's much more critical. On a main slate and the showdown, it's a little bit less, but I do like to see each position group. And we can go ahead. Not that this matters. This is showing all players. The all players tab will have players zeroed out that will not be used in lineups. But if you need to, you can uncheck these guys as well. But they won't show up in lineups anyway. I'm just going to uncheck them so I don't have to look at them. It annoys me. So looking at them. So I uncheck you. I uncheck you. I don't even know how to uncheck you. So whatever, right? There we go. Kind of. Next up, we have our salary range slider. And this is for player salary. We don't mess with that. I don't like to mess with that. Apparently, the cheapest salary on FanDuel is $5K for their showdown format. And it looks like there must be a 16. Oh, Pat Mahomes. Going to pay up. You want to use Mahomey. Going to pay up. All right. Flex fantasy point range. We can mess with this a little bit if you want, just to get rid of some real garbage in there. So I might raise it up a little bit up past 0.1. You know, not really necessary. We're going to control for our exposures, but, you know, if a player is projected for less than 1.5 points, we'll push them to the exclusion list. And note that it pushed about 11 more players. Yeah, I pushed a bunch more players over the exclusion list. Actually, just the one. Just the one. There's only one player projected for that low. All right, salary cap. This is a very, very important slider because one of the things we learned in our research, specifically for FanDuel, was not to spend the full cap if we want to win the money. Why, guys? Why? Why shouldn't we spend the full cap? Because if a full cap spend lineup wins this tournament, okay, and we're dealing with a mass multi-entry tournament with 150,000 entrants, we are talking about a tie of hundreds and hundreds of lineups. So the optimizer wants to spend the full cap most of the time. That's what its primary desire is, right? And this is very, very important. The full cap spend, 60K, only wins tournaments about 8% of the time. But some 50 or 40 or 35%, depending on the slate, of lineups will spend the entirety of the cap. Borderline every full cap spend lineup is going to be duplicated massively, especially if you're using a chalk captain in that lineup. Therefore, the most basic setting we're going to use here is just set it down to 59.5. That will limit the highest lineup. If you want to be a little more aggressive and go for a little bit more opportunity to get like the solo win or a potential win with fewer ties, you can go lower. You can go 59K. As a matter of fact, and this will blow your mind, and I'm not saying to chase it, but the statistics show that close to 20% of the time, the winning lineup actually spends 55K or less, which is mind-blowing. I know. Now, if you're always chasing 55K or less lineups, though, you're probably going to lose money way too often to ever get to the point where you win. So I would not suggest being that aggressive. But if you want to spend 59K or 59.5, you can control that right here. Okay, next up, we're going to set the number of lineups we want to make. Overall, we want to make 150 lineups. We're attacking big contest, let's say on FanDuel. I think I'm going to put the lineups into the contest today, guys, after I make them. Or, at the very least, we'll reserve some. Now, I always like to use tournament mode. We're going to use DFS Army projections, of course. And number of uniques. This is really interesting. When I make 150 for a showdown, I only use one unique. But there is an argument for using 2. I would not do more than 2 There's an argument for using 2. I'd make that argument a little bit stronger for DraftKings than I would for FanDuel, but here's what you need to understand. If you put in 1 unique, your distribution of lineups is going to be a lot tighter. So if you're on the right core, that's going to work out really well most of the time. If you use 2 uniques, you're going to get a little bit more spread exposures across all the different players in your pool. One thing I might suggest is just run it with 1, run it with 2, look at your exposures, get a feel for what you like. Either way works. I'm going to set it at 1 for the purpose of this demo, but I want to be clear that setting that to 2 uniques is absolutely viable and probably a better strategy potentially over the long term, especially if you're not as confident. All right. I'm seeing in the comments section, we got all the big hitters in here with me. So feeling the pressure. It's a little pressure, but we're going to deal with it. All right. So here we go. The first thing that we want to do when setting up our showdown lineups is control our rules. And we're going to start with a few basic rules. I'm going to show you how the rules making works, and we'll add rules as we go. But one of my most basic rules is, and one of the things we went over yesterday in our strategy show, was never to use 2 kickers together. So how do we make a negative rule? Harrison Butker is a kicker, and basically the rule here is if Harrison Butker is in the flex, because we don't use kickers at captain, that's another rule of thumb, then stack with no less than or exactly 0 of where is he? I believe it's Fairbairn is the other kicker. Here we go. So we're going to stack him with exactly 0 of Kaimi Fairbairn and vice versa. If Fairbairn is in the flex, we're going to stack him exactly 0 of Butker. Easy rule. This eliminates the possibility of 2 kickers in a lineup. Our study has shown that 2 kickers in the same lineup does not win tournaments. Craig is in there, Cash Keg, saying 1 unique for life, man. I get you. I feel you, bro. I use 1 unique, but there's nothing wrong with 2. All right. The next rule we're going to make, one of our primary captains is going to be the quarterback for each team. Again, in our research, we show that the quarterback is the nuts, so perfect lineup MVP. We're looking at FanDuel right now, over 42% of the time, right? To make matters worse, this is the type of game. It is a game with a massive total and 2-star quarterbacks that I think actually slightly increases the odds of a quarterback being the captain, the tournament winning captain. So if we're going to play Mahomes, we want to stack him with at least 1 of his pass catchers. Now, the reason I'm not saying at least 2 in this spot is because A, Pat Mahomes does have the possibility of running in a touchdown, and B, because of the salary levels with Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill being priced up really high, Sammy Watkins, he's over there. Mecole Hardman. I don't want a bunch of Mecole Hardman lineups. And because Mahomes is so expensive, you're going to wind up with that because you can't really squeeze him in there with Kelsey and Tyreek Hill or even Kelsey and Sammy Watkins or anything like that. So I'm going to keep it light. We're going to make the rule with no less than 1 of, and then we're going to go through his pass catchers. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelsey, Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman. I'm going to call Clyde Edwards-Helaire a pass catcher as well. He catches passes. I don't want Deshaun Watson. I don't know how that happened. Now I got to delete him. Hill, Kelsey. Oh, Sammy Watkins and Deshaun Watson. That'll do it every time. Be careful when you're doing these. Guys, this is live tutorial action happening right now. Mecole Hardman. I'm sure there's a tight end on the Oh, no, it's Kelsey. Let's see if there's anyone else that I forgot. Watkins, Hardman, and I mean, DeAndre Washington is a pass catcher, but he's not really looking to do too much here. Demarcus Robinson, if we want to play him at all, I guess we can include him here. We're going to include him as well, but hopefully I won't get too many Demarcus Robinson. So we've now set up a rule, Pat Mahomes with at least one of his pass catchers. Now, let's do the same for Deshaun Watson. We're going to keep it simple with the rules here. I don't want to go too crazy with it. Simple. This is more about showing you how to set up a rule. So Deshaun Watson is with Will Fuller, and I might go no less than 2 of for Deshaun because he is a little cheaper, to be quite honest, and a little more contrarian than Mahomes. So, we can get a little bit different with this, and his pass catchers are a little bit cheaper. So we're going to go no less than 2 of. Then we're going to get his primary pass catchers, Will Fuller. We're going to do Cooks. We're going to go Cobb. I'm sure there's a tight end here. I'm sure there's another tight end here. Akins and Fells. And do we want to count Duke, the Johnson brothers? I kind of think yes. David and Duke. I'm going to count them in as pass catchers. Why? Because they catch passes. Yeah, I changed the Deshaun Watson thing. All right. Oh, shit. It does still say Deshaun. All right. You are right. All right. Somebody from I did it again with the Watson instead of Sammy Watkins, and I'm having a brain issue where I just can't get it. But let's try it one more time. Kelsey, Sammy Watkins, Reek, Hardman. All right. There we go. So take a look. So far, we've set up a primary rule: never have 2 kickers in the same lineup. Now we've got 2 rules based around quarterback at the captain position. For now, that's enough. Every now and again, we might make some extra rules, like if we use a wide receiver as captain or MVP in this case, that we might want to include their quarterback. That's borderline a lock rule, but I don't want to sit here for an hour and make that rule right now, but we are going to get there. Actually, I am going to do it. You know what? I am doing it. Let's do it complete because I want to enter these lineups. Might as well do it right. So we're going to go if Hill is captain, no less than 1 of. Actually, no, I'm not going to do it for Mahomes again because I think it might be cost restrictive. So I'm not going to do that. But I am going to do it for Deshaun Watson. If Fuller is captain, then no less than 1 of. Imagine I did Sammy Watkins and I just messed it up. Same thing with Cook. All right, we're just going to add that. All right, here we go. If I do Sammy Watkins as captain, then I do want Mahomes in there. Understand why I'm doing this. There's a salary constraint if you're using a stud wide receiver with hit like a Kelsey with Mahomes. You just can't afford it. So if I force that combination, it would eliminate the possibility, for example, of a Kelsey Tyreek Hill lineup because you couldn't have Kelsey, Hill, and Mahomes all in the same lineup. Plus, if the 3 were in a lineup together, the chances are Mahomes would be in the MVP spot. So when there are salary restrictions, the way we see with this particular slate, I would avoid a pairing like that. Again, we're not here to focus on that. Let's give it a quick run just to kind of get a look at what the lineups created are. But we still have to get to the next and most important step, which is controlling our captain spot. Reason I'm giving it a run here right now is just I like to see who's popping, who's cracking, what's happening, that kind of thing. I like to get a sense of it all before I start to actually control for exposures. All right. We just did a quick run. Let's see who shows up at MVP most of the time. Unsurprisingly, it's Patrick Mahomes with Deshaun Watson coming up second, and then Hilaire and a couple of pass catchers. Let's take a look at our flex exposures. Darwin Thompson. Where's my man? Darrell Williams. Oh, yeah, there he is. Okay, there's my guy. Now, one thing I'm going to do, I like Darrell Williams, backup running back. We love the backup running back. Our data shows that the backup running back is generally a great play. But the first thing I want you to take a look at here in the exposures box, and again, this is before we've messed with anything. Note that next to each player, you'll see their projection, which you can adjust. You see the exposure in your contest. This is flex exposure. And if I click over to MVP, you're going to see MVP exposure. If I click over to all, you're going to see the combined exposure. But what we're looking at here when we click on the flex tab is flex exposure. And as you can see here, in our first run, we're getting 48% exposure to Deshaun Watson, whereas the field is on him in the flex via our projection at 64%. Okay, the next one is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We're getting 44% exposure to him in the flex, and the field is expected to be about 38.5%, and so on and so forth. We're getting a lot of Mecole Hardman, and this is what happens when you create a rule around Patrick Mahomes. It's hard to afford him on this contest, so when you create the rule, it's going to squeeze in a cheap guy to fulfill the rule. I don't like it, so we're going to have to control that. Don't love Mecole this much at all. Plenty of Travis Kelce, Will Fuller, and so on and so forth. So now, how do we make our adjustments and start to really get the type of output we want? I just unchecked Isaiah Coulter because I've never heard of him. I don't know you. I uncheck you. You got to earn a right to be in my lineups. All right, so now we're going to take a look at how to control the MVP position. This is very, very important. So the first thing you want to do is decide how much exposure you want to each player. I mean, that's very, very important. The next is you tab over and click on the MVP tab. Remember, the flex tab controls the flex position. The MVP tab, little info box, toggle the MVP box to set MVP exposures. So we'll take a look. This is the MVP, and from here we can actually control our exposures. Now, the projections have pretty much everybody using Mahomes, 64% as the MVP. Now, between you and me, that makes sense because Mahomes is probably going to smash in this spot, but at the same time, that's pretty chalky. So I generally, when I see high ownership, I do have this wanton desire to just eat the chalk. I love eating chalk. It's my thing. But we know that doing that in showdowns over time is a minus EV move. We want to get a little unique. So let me set it a little below. I'm going to go, 40%. I'll be below the field. Why? Let's get a little higher on the field on Deshaun Watson, or at least, let's get a little higher. So we can go 30% here. That covers 70% of our exposure. One other thing that we know, it's very, very important, is that running backs and quarterbacks are king on FanDuel, right? This came out of our research from the other day. The incident of pass catchers being the perfect, optimal MVP is just about 18%. Running back is about 38%, and quarterback is about 42%, something in that range. And that with tight end coming in at like 3%, the balance, right? It's happened that a tight end has been there. So what we're going to do is we'll take a look at who the running backs are for both of these teams. And again, it's really interesting because it does not look like either of these running backs have a lot of nuts potential for the captain spot between Hilaire and David Johnson. But I'm going to favor David Johnson here. I'm going to say we get a young David Johnson, a refreshed David Johnson, a reinvigorated David Johnson. Could happen. You never know. It's a better than zero chance that he winds up as the nuts MVP, and it looks like he's going to be fairly low owned. Hilaire is the next guy. We'll give him 5%. I don't love Hilaire as the potential nuts MVP. I'm not even sure how good of a play he is on the slate for 12K. We've never seen him play. He's a rookie. We don't know how much playing time he's going to get. It's all very up in the air, and the Chiefs tend to not lean on the run. That doesn't mean they won't. That doesn't mean they can't. I remember a game, I think it was the opener a couple of years ago, where the Chiefs were debuting Kareem Hunt, and he went crazy on his first, I think it was his first ever game. I think it was at New England, but it's all a very foggy memory. All right. Let's look at the other potential captains here. Tyreek Hill, of course. He's always a potential captain, right? Travis Kelce, sure, he can do it. Give him 10%. Will Fuller, absolutely, right? Give him 10%. Now, that's a lot of pass catcher exposure, especially considering we know that pass catchers don't win these contests very frequently. Why did I do that? First thing we do is start to take a look and see where we want to be. Then we're going to adjust. So, see if there's any other pass catchers. Oh, you want a replay of last week, week 1, when Sammy Watkins went off for 42 fantasy points? Could it happen again? Maybe, but I don't want to waste too many lineups on that possibility. But I do want a little bit of exposure there just in case. We'll give him for 3%. So take a look at what I'm doing here. This is very, very important, guys. You control the MVP exposure. The Domination Station doesn't control it. The gods of fantasy don't control it. You control it. If you're not getting as much of a player you want, that's because you didn't type the numbers in. Now, here's an issue. If you add up the total of these exposure min, which is a forced exposure setting, this is going to be more than 100%. And unfortunately, we only have 100% of our lineups to distribute this to. So we need to do the math and adjust. So we've got 40, 70, 80, 90, 110, 120, 123%. That doesn't work. What do you got to do? You got to adjust. So where am I going to adjust? We got 123%. We're going to say, you know what? Maybe this is too much for each individual pass catcher because it's actually highly unlikely that a pass catcher is the nuts on FanDuel. It usually goes to the quarterback who's throwing to them. The only real way that like a Tyreek Hill surpasses Pat Mahomes in raw scoring is if Mahomes isn't throwing to anyone else. Now, there's a secondary possibility if Mahomes is throwing to a second person. Like, let's say Mahomes and Hill and Kelce are going off, right? Mahomes is a little more expensive than the pairing, and there is a sliver of math that shows where you couldn't use Mahomes, but you can use those two in a certain type of lineup where that works, but it's very much a sliver. The vast majority of the time, if those two are going off, Mahomes is going off even more, and he would have been the one we wanted to use him with one of them, not both. The one that goes off the most. Because you can't afford Mahomes, again, Hill and Kelce in a lineup together. You just can't. They're all there. You can't have three studs in one lineup. You can get two in there and then a sort of stud. And then when you do that, you really need to find a super turd, which we don't really have very much of going on this slate. So unless you had a 6K player, and we have Darrell Williams, which is interesting. I'm actually going to slap a love on him or a like on him. I like him more than I want to get exposure to Darrell. The RB2 tends to be one of those players that winds up in nuts lineups more frequently than people think. So again, we're controlling for our MVP exposures. Let's take another look, do a little more math. Where do we get to? I lowered the pass catchers, 5%, 5%. Let's see, still a running back. Pass catchers, let's see, 40, 70, 80, 90, 100, 103. Uh-oh. Okay, so 103. Let's go 28. Let's go 38. We should have enough room to run some lineups right now. Now let's give this a run and see what happens in our MVP spot. Ideally, the percentages of exposure for this group of players will match the numbers that we typed in to the exposure min column. So let's see if that worked out. I get this question all the time, so I'm really glad you guys are with me checking this out so you understand how this is done, and you could take a look and see for yourself if it works. All right, Mahomes, 41%, Watson, everybody else perfectly aligned to the percentage that we requested. How nice is that, right? You can see here we requested 38% Mahomes. We got 41. That's because Mahomes is by far and away, without question, the highest projected player on the slate. So we're going to get the most exposure to him. You'll note that we set a rule for Mahomes that Mahomes has to be with no less than two of his... Did we do that? Okay. Two of his pass catchers. So let's take a look at all of these lineups and make sure that that's how it worked out. Here we go. Mahomes with Watkins and Hill. We've got Mahomes with Hardman and Hill. Mahomes, Hardman, and Hilaire. We counted him. Mahomes, Watkins, and Hilaire. I definitely don't like this lineup. So let's take a look at the flex and see what we got a lot of and see if we want to control for exposures a little bit better than we have so far. Deshaun Watson. Interesting. I'm surprised we didn't get more Sammy Watkins. Not a whole lot of the kicker here. Not as much. Who do we get a ton of? Just getting a lot of these two quarterbacks in the flex and a lot of Mecole Hardman and Darrell Williams. Now, I love the Darrell Williams cheat code here. He's opening up a lot of salary to do a lot of different things. We still have some work to do on this. Yeah, Jordan Akins. But I'm not going to go through the whole process because, quite honestly, that's going to turn this tutorial into a multi-hour fiesta. So this just gives us an idea. Now, if we want to add more rules on, we can. We might say, yeah, we got the Cooks, the Fuller. We might start to add in some other rules, like if Deshaun Watson is flex, then no less than one of, and then you could do the same rules that we did for him prior, which would be Fuller, this is not a necessary rule. This will add some more correlation, narrow down your lineups. Deshaun Watson is flex, then he needs a pass catcher with him. That's fine. We can do something around the pass catchers for, I don't really like this rule, but if he's captain, or well, let's do the same for Mahomes. If Mahomes is flex, no less than one of his pass catchers as well. Let's see how that looks. Give this bad boy another run. I'm going to show you, the next thing I'm going to show you is how to control for max exposures across these contests. So right now we're just kind of dealing with rules. And we haven't shown too much with regards to controlling for exposures, right? But controlling for exposures is very, very important as well. So let's say on this run here, I've gotten 49% Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's projected to be 38%, 38.5% owned. This is FanDuel. So if I want to make a stand, I might say, you know what? I want to go underexposed on Helaire. The field is too high on him. I don't know how much he's going to be used week one. I've never seen this guy play. I don't know if they're going to use him in the goal line. I think they might use Darrell Williams as the primary running back. Whatever. I can set my max exposure limit on the player wherever I want it. So I would let's set Hilaire to 20%. Now, very, very important. When I set the max exposure limit in the flex tab, this is referring to his flex exposure. So for example, right now we're getting 47% Mahomes in the flex. I can set him down to 30%. That doesn't mean we'll get only 30% Mahomes, but I'm going to do it here just to show you. What that means is it will limit him to 30% flex exposure. We'll still get our same 41% MVP exposure. So let's give this another run and see what this looks like with max limits applied to Mahomes and Hilaire in the flex. Here we go. Now we take a look at the flex. Oop, we're getting a little more. Here's our limit, right? We limited Pat Mahomes 30%. I got a little more, a little 31, but right there, we limited Clyde Edwards-Helaire to 20%, and you'll see right here, we've got 20% Helaire. All right, so we are controlling our flex exposure by using max exposure limits. Remember, and this is a fucking pro tip, guys made me curse on a tutorial. I blame you. In the MVP spot, we control our exposures using min exposure. That's forced minimum exposure. That forces the tool to put the player into the MVP spot. We can control exactly the exposures using the forced minimum. In the flex, we are controlling our exposures and controlling for exposures primarily using max exposure limits. Now, occasionally you might say, Kevin, what if I want this super turd to show up in my lineups and I'm not getting anything? So if you want to do like a one-off of some crapola player that you're not seeing enough of, hey, I want some Jordan Akins. He's a turd. I get it. But I want to get a little bit of him in my lineups just in case. He's super cheap. He opens up a lot of stuff. Okay. He is the primary pass catcher. I get it. I get it at tight end. Although Fells has more touchdown equity, in my opinion. But Jordan Akins is the he might have a good game. Where my turds at? You know what I mean? So we can say, all right, set a min rather than raising up his projection, which we could do also. One way to do it would just be, I don't know, raise his projection from 3 to, let's say, 5.5. And we're going to just get more exposure because he's now projected a little bit higher. So let's start with that. But if I wanted to just not mess with a projection, I don't like messing with projections, you can also just say, all right, let's force Jordan Akins into, 5% of lineups. The reason we don't want to do that with multiple players or a lot of them is because it's going to wind up jamming a bunch of turds in lineups together. And actually, that reminds me of another rule that we might set here. So for those of you who stuck around, I've got a really cool rule that I like to make. It's called the Turds Rule. You're going to like this one. But hang out just a minute here. Hang out just a minute. Let's take a look at what just happened. All right, so I wanted to get a little more. Who was it? Akins. I raised up his projection, and look at that at 5.5. Now I've got 23% Akins. Maybe that's a little too much Akins. So maybe I said, well, I really only wanted 10%. Now I can set a limit of 10% and run it again, and now you'll see only 10% Akins. So in that situation, I first raised up his projection a little bit, make sure he's showing up, and then set a max limit. All right, for my last trick of the day, I'm going to show you the Turd Rule. Now, look for the turd, okay? How do I find my turds? They're low projected players, low ownership, Demarcus Robinson, Kenny Stills. These are turds, right? These are guys we don't want a lot of. Akins. I'm going to look through here and see if there's any other players. Mecole Hardman's kind of a turd. He's kind of that too. Am I going to count him as a turd? How cheap is he? Let's take a look. Where are my turds at? All right, Akins. Akins, Fells. All right, I don't want to. All right, here we go. If Akins is in the flex. Stack with exactly 0 of, and then we're going to list some other turds. Okay, I only want one. So I don't want him with fells. So I go, if Aiken's in the lineup, exactly 0 fells. I'm going to do exactly 0 of Demarcus Robinson. Why? Because he's a turd. Wait, Aikens. Robinson. Essentially, this is the one turd rule. Any other turds? Let's call Hardman and Stills are also turds. So Hardman's not really a turd. All right. Now, these players aren't interconnected. The primary connection here is Aikens and Fells, but this is just a general, I only want one crapola, a turd, punt, whatever you want to call it, in a lineup. We did some research. A quote-unquote turd shows up in the nuts lineup, something in the 25 to 20 to 30% range in terms of how often it happens. It's a little more common on Fanduel than DraftKings because, for example, a Darren Fells touchdown one might get him 9 fantasy points when you consider the catch, and maybe it's a 30-yarder and something like that. 6, 7, 8, 9, 9.5. That's usually enough on FanDuel to get you into the perfect lineup. On DraftKings, it takes a little much, but I don't want more than one turd in the lineup. And the way we can quickly do this is we can cycle through. So we might go Aikens. So now we go Fells. We do the same rule, and you add Aikens in here. You know, you get rid of Fells. Not that you need to double that rule. You can, once it's the rules in place for Aikens, you don't have to make it again for Fells. But if you want to keep him without like super turds like Stills and Demarcus Robinson and these guys who we don't really like, Darwin Thompson should be in that group. I'm going to actually uncheck Darwin Thompson. I don't really think he's going to play. I think I'm going to uncheck him, actually. Let's get him out of here. You're gone. I unfriended him. So that's how you set up what I call the turds rule. Set up a rule that if one of them is in the flex, then exactly 0 of the others, and then you just cycle through all the different names. Now, I've unchecked Darwin Thompson, but I would do the same for like a Stills. Kenny Stills is in there. We don't want Aikens. We don't want Robinson. We don't want other turds in the lineup. I want to have these kind of lineups that have more than one of these guys in them. So that's the turds rule. Okay, let's give it one more run. Oh my God. I'm going to tell you something right now. I don't believe the story. That's all. I'm leaving it at that. I don't buy it. Too weird. I don't buy it. Too sensational. I don't buy that story. All right. Here we go. Final run. Again, not the final run. This is way too much of Mecole Hardman. I don't like it, so we're going to limit him to 15%. I just want to see what this might look like if I'm doing something a little more real. Duke Johnson, kind of a turd also. I don't want more than 10% of that. And let's take one last run of the tool here and kind of get a look at some correlated lineups that we've created using our rules. After this, I'm going to show you how to download these lineups and upload them to FanDuel. I've got that all prepared. So this is going to be our last run. We're going to take a look at the exposures real quick. Now, guys, this is very, very important. This is very, very important. Maybe the most important thing. These are not my final lineups. This is Tuesday. This is about a demo of how to use this tool. So if you're out there trying to like replicate what I just did and then put it in the contest, listen, you do you, I do me, we do our thing. It's all good. We'll still be friends. But this is not what I'm putting into the lineup. I will actually reserve my contest, though, with this actual run because, you know, my time is precious and I want to do it. It's something I got to get done. So as you could see here, you could take a look at our MVP exposures. You can see our flex exposures. You can take a look here and you can see the completed lineups created. You can actually scroll through and take a look. See if you like it. Mahomes, Hilaire, Hardman. I don't love that. I might boot that one out. Notice that no lineup spends more than 59.5 because we set a rule to max the salary cap at 59.5. But I want to take a look at all of the salaries as you scroll through it here. So a lot of them are hitting the 59, but here's a 58, a 58.5. Note, we'll get a nice little range. Here's a 57. Okay, and I'm sure if we scroll down really far, we'll start to see low numbers. Again, 58.5, 57. I don't love the 57. There's another one. Those always look pretty ugly. But, maybe that's what it takes to win a tournament this week. I don't know. I actually think this is the kind of showdown that is going to spend more than less because there's so many studs available to be used. So this does feel like the type of contest where finding the right turd might be the better path to the nuts than, a middling salaried approach. But here's a pretty nice lineup that ends at 5,800, 58,000. Mahomes, Watkins, and Reek. That's a two-man with Fuller and Kaimi Fairbairn. Can we not assume that this has a chance to be the nuts? I would say it does. Now, one more thing I want to talk about actually before we let this go. There is an approach to taking down tournaments that we call the onslaught stack approach. The onslaught stack is where we use 4 players from one team and just 1 from the second team. Note that the standard construction here, you'll see we'll have 3 players, usually from the favorite, and 2 from the underdog. That's going to be pretty common as you scroll through. Or 2 and 3, 3 and 2. It's going to be pretty rare that you automatically get a 4-1, but there's one. There's your 4-1 onslaught stack. We like that happened. Now the pot here's a 4-1 Kansas City onslaught. That's what we call that. So we want to make sure we get a nice little mix of here's another 4-1 onslaught. This one's Houston. Now, in general, here's a 4-1 Kansas City onslaught. So salary does have play a role here, which is why we're getting a lot of these 4-1s. The reality is it's fairly uncommon for the underdog 4-1 onslaught to actually work, and I would not expect it to be something very good here. So as we look through our lineups, we might want to pull some of those. One trick I like to do is I'll make 160 or 170 lineups if I want to actually put in 150, and then I'll go through and I'll pull 10 or 20 of them that I don't like as much. And part of that might be looking at underdog onslaughts and saying, it just feels like not something I want to assume will happen that, 4 players from Houston are in the nuts lineup. It could happen. I'm not going to do that, but I'm just saying you can if that's how you want to do it. You can look through and you could quickly see what kind of onslaughts you have going on. Here's a Watkins Mahomes combo with a 3-man Houston stack. I like it. So when you're ready to put in your lineups, you're going to hit download. There's a lineup file right there. It shows up in the bar on your Google page, right? On your Chrome screen. Now we're going to go to FanDuel. We're going to find us a showdown that we want to reserve entries for. Single game, Thursday. We're going to grab a contest that we like. Upload from CSV. Load in that file. The files from the Domination Station are always in sequential order, which is nice. So if you're downloading this and not renaming it, it will always be the last one that shows up on your screen. That's how I do it. It's pretty simple stuff. Upload, boom. We are rolling. 150 lineups in. That's how it goes. All right. That's it for this showdown tutorial, guys. We're going to have a specific breakdown for this slate on Wednesday night. What day is today? I don't even know. On Wednesday night? Is today Wednesday? I don't know. Today's Tuesday. On Wednesday night, we will have a specific breakdown for this slate. So this is a general tutorial just to understand how to use this tool. I'll do a few more of these over the course of the season, just, breaking down a specific slate or just when I want to hang out with you guys. My DFS Army, that'll be DFS Army VIP only. But when we want to hang out and make some lineups together, those of you who have been in DFS Army for a bit know that what I'll just do is, on the occasions when I have a little extra time, I'll just go live stream. We'll make lineups together. We'll kind of use the Domination Station together. I'll take questions live. I love doing that kind of stuff. I didn't do much of that here because, again, we want this to be more of a focus on how to use this tool. So hopefully this helps. We're always around with questions, and good luck this season. We're going to destroy these showdowns like we always do. And I will see you guys on the leaderboard.
Got the best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets, casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, 8th place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got...